To evaluate continuous burst, I set fine JPEGs with all manual exposure, focus, and color settings, recording to a V30 type card. With the mechanical shutter, the maximum is 8 and it delivers consistently, taking 480 pictures in 60 seconds without hitting the buffer or stuttering. Impressive. With the electronic shutter, higher rates are possible. The 20 frame setting is maintained for 3 seconds, then slows to about 13, which it maintains for about 20 seconds and then slips to about 8. 25% crop, these will be 17 megapixel medium images, and you can see that on screen. Goes up to 30. That lasts for about a second before slipping to 20 and then quickly becomes erratic. In the 5th second, only 3 images, then 17, then 5, then 9. You get the idea. Let's go back to focus one more time to see how well the X-S10 follows a moving object through the frame. This is the continuous focus mode, and wide enables tracking. The rectangle is used to pick the subject. When the train enters, I soft press to start tracking, and this is exemplary performance. Not only does it lock solidly onto the car and stays with it even as it gets to the edge of the focusable area and turns to face front, and then stays with it until the car reaches the lens's closest focus distance. Now let's do it again with the shutter running. The focus stays on the train while recording with an occasional slip. Here 2 frames are soft before it recovers. Incidentally, I did find using the mechanical shutter to be slightly less reliable with continuous focus burst than electronic. Continuous focus options control how the focus engine reacts to movement. There are 5 presets for the 3 controls and a custom setting to create your own tracking profile. This is also where you'll find Panorama. 2 size options, 4 directions, and it creates the final image in camera. My hack is to turn the camera to portrait and shoot sideways, which creates the largest vertical dimension. Landscape is 9600 by 1440, but when you shoot portrait, the result is 9600 by 2160. Fujifilm's multi-exposure mode is now best in class. There are 4 modes to combine images. Let me show you in this scene where I combine an out-of-focus image with an in-focus one. This is add, this is average, this is light, and this is dark. This adds to the creative potential of this function, which I've generally dismissed in the past. Multi-exposure combines up to 9 exposures, and when RAW is on, each exposure is saved as a RAW file. That way, if you didn't get exactly what you wanted, you'll be able to create the image in post. There are more drive modes in the menu. These first appeared in the X-T3. Sportsfinder, which records a cropped image, 17 megapixel, but provides a larger field of view, so you can see the subject in the viewfinder just before it enters the frame. This only works with the mechanical shutter and maxes to 8 frames. Now, pre-shot, on the other hand, only works with the electronic shutter, and this feature buffers while the shutter is soft pressed and then saves approximately 10 images just before the shutter is fully pressed. Check my X-T3 review if you need a demo. Link in the description. And the self-timer. With 2 and 10-second options, note that if you combine this with burst, it will take 5 images. There are brackets for ISO and white balance, each with 3 options. Then auto exposure and film simulations. Use the menu to set these. For exposure, up to 9 exposures, up to 3 stops differential as displayed along the ruler at the bottom. There are options to take exposures up or down from the current setting. And when it's set to continuous, a single shutter press takes all the images. For film simulation, 3 can be selected. A single exposure saves 3 JPEG files along with 1 RAW file. Focus bracket, which is found on the camera, not on the focus menu, makes small focus changes to record all possible focus points. This is best for macro shooting, but there are other situations where it would be useful. There's an auto mode, which takes the images for you. That should be easy. However, the instruction screen isn't clear and disappears quickly. Select the closest point A and then press OK, then the furthest point B and press back. On the Drive menu, select Bracket and then Focus and press the shutter release. The camera will take the number of images it feels are required, in this case 109. In manual mode, you control the number of images and the focus step increment. Although manual settings require a little trial and error, I got all the images I needed to get the tulips in focus with a setting of 50 images and a step of 9. Now, there's no focus stacking feature in camera, but it's easy enough to do in Photoshop, creating an image where all of these tulips are in focus. Last drive option, also on the menu, is the interval timer or time lapse. Although the X-S10 doesn't support creating the video in camera, the ability to take an infinite number of frames does make this a useful feature. The X-S10 has 2 video modes. In stills mode, you can press the red record button, unless you've repurposed it, to start recording. Although it starts recording in any mode, in filters mode, the settings aren't retained while recording. In stills, movie settings are very limited. Best to switch to video mode. Now, the best video feature, particularly for vloggers, is that the screen swivels out and faces forward, and the external mic in port is out of the way of the rotation. However, the USB and HDMI ports are in the way, potentially blocking the screen. Now, there's no crop from stills to video, either in HD or 4K. The movie menu controls the video exposure mode. I prefer manual. The video menu's resolutions include 16:9 for TV and computer screen, and 17:9 for cinema. 4K and HD 1080 are available. Frame rates up to 30 drop frame in 4K, up to 60 drop in HD. Data rates up to 200 megabits. If I have high quality available, that's what I'm using. 2 file format options, MOV with the uncompressed LPCM audio format, MP4 with AAC, the standard MPEG-4 audio format. I can't see any difference in the video, both use the H.264 codec. I'm indifferent, but use MOV. If you have a reason to prefer one over the other, please let me know in the comments. Both record to 8-bit with 420 chroma sampling to SD and 10-bit with 422 on HDMI. High-speed mode enables in-camera slow motion, up to 10 times if you combine 240-frame recording with 24-frame playback. There's a 1.29 crop option in the menu. This setting enables a uniform crop if you're using stabilization, or gives you a little more zoom range. This is the full scene, and turning on the crop now with the crop. Crop setting is displayed upper left. Turning optical and in-body stabilization on doesn't crop, but adding digital does crop to 1.1. No change in crop when boost is activated. So, with stabilization off, the handheld results at 50mm are predictably unsteady. With optical plus in-body, the results are steadier. Digital crops in, but the shot's about the same, smoothing out the unsteady movement. When I pan, there's a slightly perceptible jumpiness. Boost is recommended for static shots. The shot seems equally steady, but pans may be slightly jumpier. And note that if your lens has an OIS switch, the off option won't appear in the menu. The X-S10 is fairly sophisticated in terms of features like control over HDMI output, external record control, and timecode. For color, I typically use Chrome, but the Eterna film simulations are specifically designed for video. Fujifilm recommends using the higher dynamic range settings for Eterna. Be your own cinematographer. And there's F-log, which works like this. Here's the DSC Lapse chart using the standard Provia film sim. I've exposed this to fill the histogram from dark to bright. And you can see that on the waveform image as well, from pretty close to 0 to nearly 100, and the X crosses at about 55%. The steps are fairly even. When F-log is turned on, the contrast is decreased. You can see that on the histogram there's more room on the right, and also on the waveform, where the whitest chip is now at 70% and the darkest at 20%. So a dramatic increase in the dynamic range is now available, which is useful for sunlit exteriors with dark shadows. The wider dynamic range means that this footage must be adjusted in editing. Fujifilm provides a free lookup table, we usually say LUT, to make your transformation, but you can make the adjustments using your NLE's exposure and color controls. Because the LCD screen will also look washed out, there's a menu setting, F-log View Assist, which applies the LUT to the monitor. For an external monitor, you can also install the free LUT to make it more like the final result. To test overheating, I heated the studio to 25 Celsius and recorded 4K at 200 megabits with a fully charged battery and USB power. The overheating icon appeared before 20 minutes was up. 2 restarts and 50 minutes later, when I ran out of card space, the temperature icon was still on screen, but the camera hadn't yet quit. Although there are a few occasions when you might actually observe this effect in real situations. Like most cameras, the X-S10 is susceptible to rolling shutter, the effect that bends vertical lines as you pan. It's slightly less pronounced in HD. Focus options are limited in video. There are 2 modes, multi, the equivalent of wide for stills, in other words, full auto. Area offers some control for size and position on this 91 spot grid. Touch is very useful for setting the focus point. Continuous has 2 controls, how sensitive it is to new objects appearing and how quickly it changes. Locked on stays with the subject, even as a very distracting object moves through the foreground, while the quick option resets when it identifies the train and then resets quickly. Face Detect integrates with these settings. The speed control is useful when using touch focus to switch subjects while you're recording. This is the fastest, this is the midpoint, and this is the very slow setting. Almost too slow, but it provides a good range to work with. Note that while you're not recording, it's always fast. For manual focus, expanded view and peaking assists are available. With continuous tracking at locked on and face eye auto on, clearly I am not the ideal candidate for face detection. Doesn't get me. And although focus is steady and seems to stay with me, there's a slight pulsing in the background. As always, if your subject remains a constant distance from the camera, manual is your best option. The 16 to 80 millimeter lens opens to f4. So for this scene, by the light of a single candle, I've switched to the Fujinon MKX 18 to 55 cinema lens, which opens to t2.9. The highest ISO in video is 25,600. This is 12,800. The auto ISO cannot be adjusted for video mode. I captured a custom white balance for candlelight. That's probably lower than the minimum Kelvin, which is 2500. Now, I find the image a little soft and there's some noise, but it reads as a nice candlelit mood. And I'm creating a best video settings video for the X-S10, where I'll talk more about the MKX cinema lens and provide guidance to video novices who need to get started quickly. You'll find more detail and some hacks there. I reviewed Fujifilm's camera remote app in another video. It can take stills and video remotely, but its best feature is the ability to upgrade the firmware. Oh, This video was recorded with firmware 1.0. The app synchronizes time and location data between the device and the camera and can be configured to transfer images from the camera automatically. I also wanted to show you the new webcam feature, but even with Fujifilm support didn't work. That's hopefully addressed in the firmware that's expected at the time the camera is released. The 16 to 80mm lens with a constant f4 is available as a kit with the X-S10. In size and weight, it pairs nicely and offers good walk-around flexibility. It's optically stabilized and weather-resistant. Stabilization is controlled in camera settings. There's no switch. My sample was made in the Philippines. Filter diameter 72mm, closest focus is 35 centimeters. There are marked rings for focal length and aperture, which is softly detented in 1/3 stop increments. A focus ring is unmarked, and while it is focus by wire, the linear setting in the menu provides more accurate control. Zoom action, 1/4 turn from tight to wide, is smooth and linear, but sticky enough to keep it in place when tilted up or down. I enjoyed this lens and used it for most of the photos and video I recorded. Battery life seems about average. It's rated for 325 shots. Thanks to USB-C power delivery, the camera can be powered and charged from either a PD-type battery or outlet. Although the USB-C cable is included, there's no power adapter. As Fujifilm's menu has expanded, organization has decreased. ISO should be with the tone curve and dynamic range controls. Shutter should be with the Sportsfinder and pre-shot setting. And the dimmed out options are beyond frustrating. There's no way to tell why dynamic range priority isn't available. I tried RAW, shutter type, drive mode. The only way to fix it was to reset the shooting settings. That shouldn't be necessary. I did figure it out eventually. It requires a minimum ISO of 320. I knew that. But why not just make it available and pop up an alert that ISO has been reset to 640 to make the full range available? And while my menu is useful, there are many settings, mostly from the setup screens, that can't be added. And there's no option to return to the previous setting. Once my menu is activated, you'll be looking at my menu line 1 every time you access the menu. If not, screen 1, line 1. It would really be useful to be able to set an option for which behavior you'd like. And a little time with a user experience designer might be appropriate. Sometimes it feels as if the X-S10 is a little too small, particularly when a quick release plate is mounted, which not only makes it hard to rotate and then close the LCD, but also to change lenses. There's just too little clearance along the bottom. More would have been appreciated. Otherwise, this camera has lots to recommend it, and it's a finalist for Best Small General Purpose APS-C Camera. If your camera needs are not being met with your current equipment, it should be on your short list. But don't buy a new camera if what you really need is practice to improve your skills. Do keep creating photographs until your memory card is full and your battery is empty. If you have relevant questions or civil comments, I enjoy interacting with you and will read and reply to all. For those who are subscribed to my channel, thanks. Your interest and support is appreciated. And if you're thinking about subscribing, please act soon and avoid the last-minute holiday panic. Thanks for watching.